So let's continue our deep dive into tarot mysteries. Um, I guess occultist style. And I would definitely suggest watching the other video first, where we kind of go over the way the mystery school handles tarot decks and tarot cards is different than fortune tellers, psychics, mediums, channelers, new agers, and all people trying to make money by doing card readings. Um, and what I think is really interesting is that the Ouija board and tarot cards are put out by game companies. And I would say that should be really noticed that, yeah, life is a game. And if it's fun, don't play. And when you think about games, there has to be risk, there has to be challenges. Um, Otherwise, why would you play it? So it can't be too easy and it can't be too hard. Life is a game. And so the tarot deck is definitely a game. And I feel like once you are able to go, okay, this could be like a mental game, this could be an intuitive game, this could be a spiritual game. Life can be a game, and there should be elements of fun and joy in it. And just like at work, your job, there should be an amount of play going on. If you don't find what you're doing a little bit playful, if you're not gaining any fun out of it, then why learn those lessons in life? Why go to work? Does your money mean anything? If you have to earn all this money, but there's no sense of joy and play, um, I would say you're out of balance. And so the Unicrucial symbol, or the six-pointed star, is a symbol of balance. As above, so below, as within, so without. It's also the alchemist star, and the seventh point was integrated into a center. So the old alchemist star had 7 points representing the 7 planets. And Aleister Crowley goes, let me just put the sun in the middle where it belongs. And let me put Saturn, or let me put Saturn at the top and the moon at the bottom, Jupiter and Mercury, Venus and Saturn, or sorry, Mars. So opposite planets. And the sun, in a weird way, has no opposite. Why? It's a luminary. The moon is considered a luminary, but it actually has a physical body, in a strange way representing Earth. So it's nearest the Earth as well. So, anyways, so there's our seven ruling planets. Uh, the deacons, each sign is ascribed a planet. And these are like the inner planets of our daily lives that govern our daily activity. You know, the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter. Those, so in astrology, so astrology and tarot are kind of like two sides of the same coin. And you get into the alchemy of it. You get into the alchemy of it when you start working with the daily planets, the ones that move our everyday lives, our moods, our minds, our life lessons, how we get to point A to point B, and what type of energy and what we're seeking, and all that happens with the inner planets. Everything, within Saturn's belt, anything from Saturn inward, those are very active planets that basically run our life. Once you get out of Saturn's belt, Saturn being the guardian of the mount, the gatekeeper between the two worlds, and the governor of law slash karma. So once you have done all that, once you unlock Saturn, then you're able to integrate the outer three planets that we know of, and also any other planet after that. And so you really have to get through Saturn slash Capricorn slash the devil card. If you're dealing with the devil, you're dealing with Saturn and everything inside of that. You haven't mastered. And so having some knowledge of Western mystery, you learn more about the inner workings of our daily lives, the patterns that run our lives, the elemental patterns that are in mixed combinations, creating temperaments and attitudes and situations and circumstances. It's very patterned. And when you start to understand this pattern and you accept it, you graduate quickly through the ranks. You learn discipline, you learn patience, you learn focus, you learn fortitude, you learn uh, you learn that our life, there's inner workings going on, and it's not just atoms, electrons, protons. It's not just chemical reactions and electrical impulses. It's gravitational forces from planetary bodies having impact on us, and vice versa. And these same gravitational forces, and there's 5 types of gravity, okay, uh, that we know of. So you could say forces are at interplay, and there are forces that are moving the planets and giving them certain characteristics. Those forces are concentrated in astrological signs. So the ecliptic or the zodiac belt, basically they're like giant lenses that focuses that energy. And the planets are receiving that focus in a concentrated form and beaming it like a laser to you. Uh, this is one interpretation, but I like to look at it as a kaleidoscope of like a light show. It's basically there's a light show going on behind the scene. And so I think it's really awesome that this card is like the light show laser beams of planetary forces concentrating on you, your own being. You're your own center of your universe, you know? And no matter which way it goes, you always come back to yourself. You could pick any point, you're going to get back, so it's kind of like a boomerang. So I think this is a perfect key for the law of karma. And it just so happens it's a wonderful key for alchemical transformations. So in the tree of life, there's the path of the serpent, moving up the tree, branch to branch, and it can choose any way it wants to navigate the branches to get up to the top. There's no set path. But the lightning path comes straight down. you know, it moves through the 10 spheres. Bam. And you're down. And so it's easy to fall down. It's easy to start at source energy or an enlightened state. And it's actually really easy to crash. And so there's a lot of messages there. It's like you were so like a mentor. I saw you in such great light. I thought you were so capable. And then you crash into an addictive behavior, and you're out of control with your emotions or substance abuse, and you ruined your life. It's always easier to ruin your life. It's hard to climb the mountain up, and it's easy to slide down the mountain, or ski down the mountain. And that is very much like life. So I definitely say be patient with each other. And let's move into the cards more, because we're talking about balance. And we're talking about relationships, as always, which is a bizarre subject for me to even be playing with. Let's move on to the star card. here we are. Here's a relationship of opposites. But look how similar they are in pose. So these two cards are united by same posture, opposite backgrounds, a night sky full, and a daylight. Very interesting, I think. One crowned, one not crowned. Very interesting. And here's the message, kind of, as I just look at these. When you're completely vulnerable and real, there's a natural high that comes from being free. So much so, being authentically yourself, that you don't give way to lust and passions and beast-like desires. This primal self is there. So when you're all light, you've created your shadow darkness. When you're holier than thou, where do all your physical passions go of hunger and desire and that your earthly needs? When you're so angelic and benevolent and graced by God, there's a lion out there, predatory, pride. And so this is a different type of grace, being natural, being real. So I'm just pointing that out. And so I feel like there's a great union between the Strength card and the Star card. We go to the Astral. So this one, I feel like almost... So we get the sign of Leo for the Strength card, and then we get Aquarius, the opposite, the Star card. We get the blues, and we get the oranges, opposite colors. Some similarities in posture, sweeping hair. She's gracing back and she's reaching back. She's reaching, they're kind of like flip-flop of each other. But I feel like, once again, the Rider-Waite card has this... What I really like about this card is there's no astrological or planetary symbols in there to show you, and it's done so well. So I feel like she really understood the cards, or was super intuitive about it. Like, I definitely feel like the Rider-Waite was divinely inspired. So you can see where... And I had a discussion with, my friend, the Urban Alchemist, and we talked about when you start changing tarot decks, you start losing the meaning. You start losing its value. You start losing its symbols. And when you do that, you're losing critical elements of the tarot system. It's like, we're not going to use salt in food anymore because we all decided that's not cool and trendy. It's not the in thing. Well, now your food tastes different. So now when you're creating an authentic dish from a certain country, it tastes wrong. You just can't change recipes. You just can't change the meaning of words. You just can't add and subtract symbols. And we see how many hundreds of deck of cards are there. And then really, when you look at the best readers, what deck are they using? They're using the Rider-Waite tarot deck. And what deck are all the other cards based off of? Rider-Waite. Why would you want some spin-off when you can just go to the source, which is a Rider-Waite deck? So, Sagittarius and Gemini. Temperance and the Lovers. And it looks like Gemini gets the Lovers. Two nude beings. So in this one card, we get a clothed being of a higher order, and then a lower beings of a lower ordered nude, but we get the vulnerability, and then we get the, I would call it the mask of the light, being fully clothed. You're never getting the full story with a higher being. You're not. You're getting, there's a lot of assumption, oh, angels are here to help us and angels are all light. No, they're not. In Western mystery traditions and Enochian magic, they're light and dark. They have good intentions and bad intentions all rolled into one. They're integrated beings. So they're going to have the light and the dark. Those wings aren't white. Those are freaking red with black in them. But anyways, moving on, the Temperance card. So the unifying symbol of these two opposite of Sagittarius and Gemini is they're linked by wings. Like that's literally like the same being right there. Just cut the card in half. Same being. We get a golden sun crown or sphere on his head. And we get the golden sun behind the angel and flames. We get the symbolic and we get the literal. And then two cups, the people themselves, or two vessels. And then, well, we'll leave it at that. So we can see there's a lot of mirroring. So two vessels. Very cool. And matching symbols. The sun unifies it, the wings unifies it. They're both robed. I don't think it translated as well in this deck. We get black and white. That was pretty cool. And black and white. Then we get some figure masked here doing some crazy stuff. But yeah, I don't feel like it really translated very well in this deck. Another hard translation, but very simple, is the Hermit, which is usually given to Virgo, and the Moon in this deck given to Pisces. What we see, the dogs, like the underworld dogs, and then we see the god of the underworld. So this person is actually linking death with this inner hermit experience, on this primal. But we'll also find what's really interesting is it's linked with the scarab and the light and the sun god. And then we get the sun inside the lamp, so inner light. So there's a fiery something going on here. But let's see how it translates. You would think, not very much the same, right? What I found is the link is the star and the lamp and the sun. But then look at their faces. They're the same. So it's like this solar moon face and then this man's face. They're facing the same direction, almost identical, really. So I feel like they're linked through the face, which is very interesting. Very interesting indeed. But in this deck, it seems to be linked, I believe, through death, life and death. All right. The next cards I thought were kind of difficult to link together as well. But what's interesting is we get a nude wizard, more like the statue of Hermes. And then we kind of get a living being fully clothed. I find that pretty interesting. And what I really found interesting is the four beasts all have books in their hands. So I'd almost consider that like the knowledge. And then you would assume a wizard be real, would have that knowledge already. So I kind of feel like they're linked together that way. So the living beings of the four elements and the knowledge, and then the symbolic version of the four elements, and he's the one with the knowledge. So he's like the embodiment of the books. He is the word. So that's pretty profound. Then opposite backgrounds, the yellow background versus this cloudy blue and gray background, is how these two link together. The Wheel of Fortune is given to Jupiter, and the Magician to Mercury. So, was there anything else going on with that? I always feel, I'll just throw it out there, I always feel like the wheel has a lot to do with karma. And so some readers they'll say, oh, the Wheel of Fortune is things are turning out in your favor. It would be a typical fortune telling thing. Another one for the star card is it's a make-a-wish card. And I'm like, I don't see that in either card. Tell me where there's a make-a-wish. Tell me where things are turning around. That Sphinx has a sword in its hand. And that red character is like Set, a destructive god. So if anything's coming around, it's probably pretty negative. And those four holy beasts, they're reading and writing and probably the Book of Life. So I think things are getting pretty serious with what you choose to do and how you choose to will your power. I think it'd be definitely, and so I think it has a lot to do with cycles. And honestly, if you're going to be messing with magic and be a wizard, you probably better be pretty careful. And maybe you need to be working with some higher powers if you're going to assume that position. So that's really all I have to say about that card. I felt like obviously the Crowley deck once again did not translate the link very well, the relationship. Let's move on to the last set. It's Justice and the Emperor. And I feel like what's really obvious is they're both seated down on like thrones. One has a scepter, you could say a symbol of fire, and the other one has a sword, a symbol of air. And the astrological correspondences, the Emperor Aries, and Justice is Libra. I think they look pretty equal in status, which is kind of scary actually. Can the emperor overthrow the law, or does the law overthrow the emperor? And so I feel like that statement is pretty clear. So yeah, the similarity is scary to me. In this deck, we get opposite color schemes. We get the orange and yellows, and then we get the blue. And this is like a harlequin. It's like a harlequin figure. Seemingly, I would say female-ish. And then we get this very masculine red king. So the Osiris crown, and then we get the more modern crown is what's linking it. But other than that, I'm not seeing too many familiarities. This is interesting, his crossed leg, like the Hanged Man card. We've seen that before. So there's there's other links besides this like opposite polarity link that we did with the cards. And this is wrapping up. I think it was a really good exercise into finding similarities, finding differences. And I really never paid attention to that until I was talking with my friend about that. But let's call it good because I'm so tired. You know, I made this video after work and I was like, oh my gosh, it's getting late. But I decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to compare the two decks. Because first I was just going to do the video with the Crowley deck because that's where I figured, matched them up. And then something intuitive was like, you know what? Get the other deck. I was like, okay. And then it was like, put them both together and then now compare them. So, as a last note, after I said that statement, working with the cards, working with the spirit of the cards, not like an entity, but like you gain it's almost like, when you're driving your car, you really hear how the engine's working, you really get a feel for how it drives, and you kind of link with your car. It becomes an extension of you, a part of you. So you can like hear a sound that no one else can hear because you're so familiar with your car. Same thing with your cards. You get really familiar with working with cards and kind of opening up that channel that you'll get hunches and guidance. And a lot of people think, oh, it needs to be really spiritual, like a vision or an angel. It's like that's when you don't understand yourself, but when you understand yourself, you're like, oh, my own mind is putting these together. I have my own creative genius hunch to link the two decks and look for comparisons. And so what you really find so I literally see it like a pyramid in water in a dark place. And that tip of the pyramid is your conscious self. You're like, that's you every day as you know yourself. But then when the water starts to drain a little bit, you see a little bit more of that pyramid. Those are all the thoughts you were thinking that were not being heard because what you're so used to is so loud. You quiet the mind and then you can hear all these other thoughts you're thinking and these other feelings you're feeling and these other sensations you're experiencing. You get used to that, you drain the water a little bit more, and there's another layer, and there's another layer, and it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. But it was all within you, and it was all right there. So your own creative genius, your own intuition, your own gut feelings, your own hunches, your own ideas, they are your inner guide, and it's not separate from you. And there's a lot of wisdom there. Your subconscious takes in so much information, but if you were to perceive it all at once, your mind would explode. You'd feel like you're going crazy. So our mind naturally puts up filters so you can manage that information. It catalogs it for you. So your mind is actually it's an advanced system. And you're kind of learning to hack that system by being quiet, by learning to put yourself aside, by chilling out. But then if you put all this spiritual stuff on top of it, religious stuff like beliefs and attitudes and agendas, you're making it harder on yourself than it really is. Like, honor yourself as a divine being with all the creative know-how within you. And now listen deeply to yourself. Listen to your gut feelings. Listen to your impulses and your instincts. So it usually takes me about 3 days to listen. I'm a little bit stubborn. I'm like, oh, I don't want to buy that deck. Oh, it costs too much money, or not today, or maybe next week. If I would have just listened, this video would have been out, and I wouldn't have to be doing it like at 11 p.m. at night after a full work day of drama, you know? And so really go, okay, know who you are, know your personality, know how you sabotage yourself, know how you block yourself, know when you tell yourself things you want to hear versus things that are real. Get really familiar with you and the way you think and the way you feel and how you tie your own hands behind your back, and how you set yourself up for failures, and how you make everything grand and put everyone else and everything else above you. No. So part of learning mysteries is balancing yourself out and getting really, really, really familiar with you. So when something different comes in, like a guide or an angel, you recognize it. You're like, this is how I think. This is how I feel. This is how, on a deeper level, I intuitively get this. And then here's this other thing, because I'm so familiar with me, here's this other voice. That's clearly a guide. Here's a vibration that's clearly not part of my energy field or my clients. I'm clearly receiving a download. From who knows where, I don't need to know, but I now have a lot of information. So you're opening multiple levels or frequencies, multiple antennas, and you can put that all together. You're like, okay, my gut's saying this, my mind is saying that, my feelings are saying this, my intuition is saying that, and my guide is saying this. That's 5 channels. And if they all kind of link together and they're all kind of saying the same thing, you're probably right. You've triangulated on what the situation, the question at hand, where or your perception is getting really clear. My mind says I'm here. My body says I'm here. My feelings say I'm here. My intuition says I'm here. I'm vibing it. And this other thing, whatever it is also affirming how here I am. Here I am. Things get really clear when you get clear with yourself. And that's how you can really distinguish. That's how you can learn to really dial in your intuitive abilities.